8-year-old Sarah Mitchell was hiking alone on the mountain trail when the 150-pound mountain lion emerged from the dense pine forest. Its predatory instincts immediately locked onto the small girl who had become separated from her family during their camping trip in the remote wilderness of Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. The child had wandered off the main trail while following a butterfly, completely unaware that she had entered the territory of one of North America's most efficient stalking predators during prime hunting hours. "Daddy, help me!" Sarah screamed as the massive cougar began its calculated approach, moving with the silent, deadly precision of an apex predator that had identified helpless prey in the isolated wilderness where no help should have been available. That's when the rumble echoed through the canyon. Jake "Steel" Morrison, a former Marine Force recon operator riding alone on his return from a memorial service for fallen brothers, heard something that made every protective instinct in his combat-trained soul explode into action. The unmistakable sound of a child's terror piercing through mountain wilderness that should have been empty of human presence. This battle-hardened warrior was about to face the most dangerous solo rescue in motorcycle club history, proving that real courage means standing alone between a child and death when no one else is coming to help. Would you like to join us for this incredible journey? Subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss what happens next. Jake "Steel" Morrison had been riding the mountain highways of Colorado for over 12 years, his solitary journeys serving as both memorial rides for fallen Marines and personal therapy for combat trauma that traditional treatment had never fully addressed. At 44 years old, the former Force Recon commander carried the physical and psychological scars of 3 tours in Afghanistan. But he had found peace and purpose in the brotherhood of the road, and the commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Steel was returning from the funeral service of Sergeant Michael Chen, a Marine brother who had lost his battle with PTSD, when his combat-honed hearing detected something that made every alarm in his tactical awareness system detonate simultaneously. The combination of a child's desperate scream and the distinctive sounds of large predator movement through mountain terrain was unmistakable to someone who had served in regions where such combinations meant immediate life-or-death crisis. "Jesus Christ," Steele muttered as he immediately pulled his Harley to a stop and began moving toward the source of the scream. There was no time to call for backup, no opportunity to develop a tactical plan, no moment to consider his own safety. Somewhere in these mountains, a child was about to die if someone didn't act immediately. The mountain lion that was stalking 8-year-old Sarah Mitchell represented one of nature's most perfect killing machines, capable of explosive speed, bone-crushing bite force, and the ability to kill prey twice its size through suffocation and spinal damage. At 150 pounds of pure muscle and instinct, the cougar had identified Sarah as easy prey in its territorial domain. Steele's Force Recon training engaged as he processed the tactical nightmare he was facing alone. A child trapped by a mountain lion in remote wilderness represented the kind of impossible rescue scenario that required perfect timing, flawless execution, and the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect innocent life against overwhelming natural force. Moving through the forest with the silent precision that had kept him alive through countless combat operations, Steele reached a position where he could observe the stalking scene that was developing 50 yards ahead. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. Sarah Mitchell stood frozen in absolute terror as the massive cougar approached with the patient, calculated movements of a predator that had identified guaranteed prey. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The tactical situation Steele faced was unprecedented in his military and civilian experience. Unlike combat operations where he had team support, advanced equipment, and operational planning, this rescue would depend entirely on his individual skills, immediate decision-making, and willingness to engage a wild predator with nothing but courage and marine training. Sarah's bright yellow jacket made her clearly visible against the brown and green forest backdrop, but her complete paralysis was the only thing preventing the cougar from triggering its explosive attack sequence. The mountain lion was conducting the kind of patient stalking that preceded a killing strike, moving closer with each passing second. Assessment: one child, 8 years old, approximately 60 pounds, completely helpless. Steele analyzed silently as his marine training automatically processed the situation. One mountain lion, mature adult, approximately 150 pounds, showing active predatory behavior. No backup, no equipment, no time to call for help. The predator's behavior indicated this was not territorial defense or chance encounter, but active hunting. The cougar had identified Sarah as prey and was conducting systematic stalking that would culminate in an explosive attack designed to break her neck and drag her to a secluded location where feeding could occur without interruption. Steele made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He began moving toward the cougar, knowing that his intervention would almost certainly result in the predator attacking him instead of Sarah, but understanding that an adult marine had better survival chances than an 8-year-old child. No plan survives contact with the enemy, Steele reminded himself, recalling the military axiom that had guided him through impossible situations in Afghanistan. But sometimes you don't need a plan, you just need to be willing to die so someone else can live. Tell me, have you ever saved someone? Steele asked himself as he prepared for what could be the last action of his life, knowing that failure meant watching a child die in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. The mountain lion's acute senses detected Steele's approach before Sarah was aware of any potential rescue. The predator's ears rotated toward the new sound, its body language shifting from focused stalking to alert assessment as it processed the presence of an adult human entering its territory during active hunting. Steele understood that he had perhaps 30 seconds before the cougar would either attack Sarah immediately to secure its prey or abandon the hunt entirely. Every instinct from his military training told him to create maximum disruption to force the predator's attention onto himself rather than the child. "Hey, hey, over here!" Steele shouted as he emerged from cover, making himself visible to both the mountain lion and Sarah while positioning himself between them. His voice carried the command authority that had controlled dangerous situations in combat zones around the world. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The cougar's head snapped toward Steele, its predatory focus shifting from the small, helpless prey to the larger, more threatening adult male who had invaded its territory during hunting. Sarah's eyes also fixed on Steele, hope replacing terror as she recognized the presence of an adult who might be able to save her. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? "Sarah, listen to me very carefully," Steele called to the child, his voice calm despite the mortal danger they both faced. "I'm going to get you out of here, but you need to do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that for me?" Sarah nodded, her 8-year-old mind processing that the scary man in leather was trying to help her against something much more frightening than any adult human could be. "When I count to 3, I want you to back away slowly toward those rocks behind you," Steele instructed, while maintaining eye contact with the cougar, which was now focused entirely on him as the primary threat. "Don't run, don't make sudden movements, just back away slowly and get behind those rocks." The mountain lion was displaying the classic behavior patterns that Steele had studied during his military training in regions where large predators were operational threats. The cougar was evaluating whether the new human represented a threat to its hunting, or an even better prey opportunity. 1, Steele counted, beginning to move in a pattern designed to draw the cougar's attention while giving Sarah a clear escape route to protective terrain. 2! The tension in that moment was unlike anything Steele had experienced in combat. In military operations, he had faced enemies who were trying to kill him, but they were humans using weapons and tactics he understood. The mountain lion represented pure predatory instinct, operating according to evolutionary programming that had made cougars successful hunters for millions of years. "3!" Steele commanded, and Sarah began her careful retreat toward the protective rocks, while Steele continued advancing toward the cougar, making himself appear to be the more immediate concern for the predator's territorial and hunting instincts. The mountain lion's response was swift and terrifying. Instead of retreating from Steele's approach, the cougar crouched into attack position, its muscles coiling for the explosive leap that would close the distance between predator and prey in less than 2 seconds. Steele had perhaps 1 second to make the decision that would determine whether both he and Sarah survived the encounter. His marine training had taught him that when facing superior force with inadequate resources, the only option was to attack first and attack with overwhelming commitment. The former Force Recon operator charged directly at the mountain lion, shouting at maximum volume while making himself appear as large and threatening as possible. The action violated every rule of safe wildlife interaction, but it represented exactly the kind of calculated extreme risk that marine training had prepared him to take when protecting others. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The collision between Steele and the mountain lion occurred in mid-air as the cougar launched its attack at the same moment Steele committed to his charge. The impact threw both combatants to the ground, where the real fight began. A life-or-death struggle between a trained marine and one of nature's most efficient killers. The mountain lion's claws raked across Steele's chest and arms as he fought to control the predator's head and prevent its teeth from reaching his throat. His military hand-to-hand combat training provided techniques for fighting human opponents, but nothing had prepared him for the explosive power and flexibility of a wild predator designed by evolution to kill. "Sarah, run!" Steele shouted as he wrestled with the cougar, using his body weight and leverage to prevent the predator from using its superior agility. "Run back toward the trail and yell for help." The 8-year-old girl followed his instructions with remarkable courage, running toward safety while Steele continued his desperate battle with the mountain lion. Her escape meant that the rescue had achieved its primary objective, saving the child's life, even if Steele might not survive the encounter. The fight lasted only 90 seconds, but it felt like hours to Steele as he used every technique from his military training to survive the cougar's attacks while inflicting enough damage to convince the predator that he represented more danger than he was worth as prey. The turning point came when Steele managed to land a devastating blow to the mountain lion's ribs, causing the predator to break off its attack and reassess the situation. The cougar had expected easy prey, not a trained fighter who was willing to inflict serious damage to defend himself and others. Bleeding from multiple claw wounds but still functional, Steele maintained aggressive posture while the mountain lion retreated to a defensive position. Both combatants were evaluating whether continued fighting was worth the risk of serious injury. "That's right, you bastard," Steele muttered as he faced down the cougar while backing toward Sarah's escape route. "I'm not easy prey. Find something else to hunt." The mountain lion made the calculation that had kept its species alive for millions of years. This prey was too dangerous to be worth the energy expenditure and injury risk. The cougar retreated into the forest, disappearing with the same silent efficiency it had used to approach Sarah. Steele continued his fighting withdrawal until he was certain the predator had departed, then began moving rapidly toward where Sarah had fled. His wounds were serious but not life-threatening, and his primary concern was ensuring that the child reached safety and received any medical attention she might need. "Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Steele asked himself as adrenaline began subsiding and he processed what had just occurred. He had fought a mountain lion with his bare hands and survived. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, What secret do you keep? Sarah Mitchell was found 20 minutes later by her parents and park rangers who had been searching for her since she had been reported missing 2 hours earlier. The 8-year-old was physically unharmed, but severely traumatized by her encounter with the mountain lion and confused about the identity of the man who had saved her life. "A scary man with a motorcycle helped me," Sarah told the park rangers who found her. "He fought the big cat so I could run away. I think he got hurt." The search for Steele took another 40 minutes, as the former Marine had continued moving through the forest to ensure the mountain lion was no longer a threat to other hikers in the area. When park rangers finally located him, they found a man who was clearly in need of medical attention but refused to leave the area until he was certain the predator had been properly documented and tracked. "Sir, you need immediate medical attention," Park Ranger Patricia Rodriguez told Steele as she assessed his injuries. "Those are serious claw wounds that require professional treatment." "The cougar needs to be tracked and monitored," Steele replied. His military training focused on completing the mission rather than personal comfort. It showed hunting behavior toward a human child. That makes it a public safety threat that needs professional wildlife management. The emergency medical treatment that Steele received at the scene was provided by paramedics who were amazed that he had survived a close-quarters encounter with a mountain lion. His injuries included deep claw marks across his chest and arms, but no damage to vital organs or major blood vessels. Dr. Michael Chen, the emergency physician who treated Steele at the local hospital, was incredulous about the circumstances that had led to his injuries. "Mountain lion attacks on humans are extremely rare," Dr. Chen explained. "Surviving a close-quarters fight with a cougar is almost unprecedented. You're either incredibly lucky or incredibly skilled." "Just incredibly stubborn," Steele replied with the dark humor that had helped him survive combat operations. "Marines don't give up, especially when kids are involved." The investigation into the incident revealed that Sarah had become separated from her family during a day hike when she wandered off the main trail to follow a butterfly. Her parents had realized she was missing within 30 minutes and had immediately contacted park authorities, but the search area was vast and difficult to navigate. "Without Mr. Morrison's intervention, this would have been a fatal attack," reported Wildlife Officer Jennifer Walsh during the incident briefing. "The mountain lion was exhibiting clear predatory behavior and was in the final stages of stalking when he intervened. His actions undoubtedly saved the child's life. But for Steele, the heroic nature of his actions was secondary to the knowledge that he had been in the right place at the right time to help someone who needed protection. The rescue had given him a sense of purpose and validation that had been missing since his military discharge. 6 months after his encounter with the mountain lion while rescuing Sarah Mitchell, Jake "Steele" Morrison had transformed from a solitary veteran struggling with PTSD and survivor's guilt into a confident community protector who had found his true calling in civilian life. The fight that had saved Sarah's life had also saved Steele's soul, giving him purpose and meaning that had been missing since his discharge from the Marines. Steele sat in Sarah's family living room in Boulder, reviewing the latest wilderness safety reports while 8-year-old Sarah worked on her homework at the kitchen table, chattering happily about her day at school. The modest suburban house had become his second home, and the Mitchell family had become the family he had never had during his years of military service and post-combat isolation. "The mountain lion tracking program is showing excellent results," Steele reported to Sarah's parents, Tom and Lisa Mitchell, as he studied the latest wildlife management data. "Cougar-human encounters in the park are down 60% since we implemented the enhanced monitoring and education protocols." Sarah smiled as she looked up from her math homework, her bond with Steele having evolved from rescue victim and rescuer to something deeper. He had become her protector, mentor, and the uncle who understood things about courage and danger that other adults couldn't explain to a child who had faced death. The relationship between Sarah and Steele had grown far beyond the dramatic rescue that had brought them together. The 8-year-old had become the inspiration for Steele's transformation from isolated veteran to community leader, while Steele had provided the kind of protective presence that had helped Sarah process her trauma and develop remarkable resilience. "Tell me about the Sarah Mitchell Wilderness Protection Foundation," her father Tom requested, noting the detailed program materials spread across Steele's briefcase related to the non-profit organization that had been established to prevent other children from facing the danger Sarah had survived. "We are now operating wilderness safety education programs throughout Colorado and neighboring states," Steele explained with the enthusiasm of someone who had found his life's work. "Sarah's experience showed me that children can survive impossible situations when they have proper education and when adults are willing to risk everything to protect them. But more importantly, it showed me that my military training has civilian applications that can save lives." The Sarah Mitchell Wilderness Protection Foundation represented something unprecedented in veteran community service. A single combat veteran using his military expertise and survival experience to develop wilderness safety education that could prevent predator encounters while training other veterans to serve as emergency responders in remote areas. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Dr. Patricia Martinez, the trauma therapist who had been working with both Sarah and Steele since the mountain lion encounter, was amazed by their mutual healing and growth. Both Sarah and Jake have demonstrated remarkable recovery from what should have been a permanently traumatizing experience, she reported during a presentation to the Colorado Association of Trauma Psychology. Their relationship shows how shared survival experiences can create therapeutic bonds that exceed what traditional counseling can achieve. The secret to both Sarah's and Steele's remarkable healing was their understanding that survival carried responsibilities. Sarah had learned that she could be brave and smart in dangerous situations, while Steele had discovered that his combat training made him uniquely qualified to protect civilians from threats that traditional law enforcement couldn't address effectively. Dr. Martinez's research had documented measurable improvements in Steele's PTSD symptoms, depression, social isolation, and sense of purpose that correlated directly with his involvement in wilderness safety education and his role as Sarah's protector and mentor. Steele's transformation demonstrates that combat veterans can find healing through service that applies their military training to civilian protection missions. Dr. Martinez explained to veteran services professionals studying innovative approaches to PTSD treatment. When veterans understand that their training can save lives in peacetime, it provides purpose and meaning that traditional therapy often can't achieve. Steele had become Sarah's wilderness survival instructor, using his military training to teach her advanced outdoor skills, while also serving as her guide for understanding how courage and preparation could overcome fear and helplessness. Sarah's not just learning wilderness skills, she's learning to be a protector, Steele explained to wilderness education professionals who observed their training sessions. She understands that surviving the mountain lion gives her knowledge that could help other people avoid similar dangers. The wilderness training that Sarah received was adapted for her age and physical capabilities, but it included real skills that could make the difference between life and death for someone facing danger in remote locations where professional help was hours away. "Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Sarah asked Steele during one of their training sessions, curious about his military service and whether he had rescued other people. Steele's answer became a teaching moment about service, courage, and the responsibility that came with survival. "I helped many people during my time as a Marine," he explained, "but saving you taught me that the most important missions happen when we use our training to protect people who can't protect themselves, especially children who depend on adults to keep them safe. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? Tom Mitchell, Sarah's father, had been so impressed by Steele's dedication to his daughter's recovery and safety education that he had left his corporate job to become the foundation's executive director, applying his business expertise to scaling Steele's wilderness protection programs. Steele showed our family what real heroism looks like, Tom explained during fundraising presentations to potential foundation supporters. When he fought that mountain lion to save Sarah, he wasn't thinking about recognition or reward. He was thinking about protecting an innocent child. That's the kind of character we need more of in our communities. Tom's business background had been crucial for transforming Steele's individual efforts into a sustainable organization that could train other veterans and provide wilderness safety education to thousands of families throughout the region. Lisa Mitchell had used her background as an elementary school teacher to develop the Foundation's youth education programs, creating age-appropriate curricula that taught children wilderness safety while building their confidence and decision-making abilities. Children like Sarah face dangers that adults often create through poor planning or inadequate supervision, Lisa explained to education conferences throughout the region. Our programs teach children practical skills for surviving dangerous situations, while also educating adults about their responsibilities for creating safe outdoor experiences. The youth education programs included instruction in wildlife awareness, emergency signaling, basic survival skills, and most importantly, how to stay calm and think clearly when facing frightening situations. Sarah had become the program's primary student instructor, demonstrating to other children that surviving scary experiences could make someone stronger and wiser rather than more fearful. Her participation in educational presentations throughout Colorado had inspired hundreds of children to take wilderness safety seriously. When Sarah tells other kids about staying calm and trusting good adults during emergencies, they listen because she's actually survived something terrifying, Lisa observed during program evaluations. She's living proof that children can be brave and smart when they need to be. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The foundation had attracted the attention of other combat veterans who were struggling with post-military transition issues and seeking meaningful ways to apply their training to civilian service. Within 6 months, 12 veterans had joined Steele's programs, creating the core of what would become the Mountain Guardian Network. Sergeant Major Rick Doc Patterson, a former Army Special Forces medic who had been struggling with PTSD and unemployment, found new purpose as the Foundation's Wilderness Medical Coordinator. Working with Steele and Sarah showed me that my military training could save civilian lives, Doc explained. Every time we train families or conduct wilderness patrols, we're preventing tragedies. Captain Derek Bear Williams, a former Marine officer who had been isolated and depressed since his discharge, became the Foundation's wildlife behavior specialist after completing extensive training in predator psychology and habitat management. Sarah's rescue taught me that we can use our tactical training to protect people from natural threats, not just human enemies. Nari, the veteran recruitment had created a brotherhood focused on civilian protection that provided both purpose for struggling former military personnel and enhanced capabilities for the wilderness safety programs. Each veteran brought specialized skills that expanded the Foundation's ability to serve communities throughout the region. Staff Sergeant Tony Scout Rodriguez, a former Army Ranger, applied his reconnaissance training to developing a network of wilderness monitoring stations that tracked predator activity and weather conditions throughout Colorado's national parks and wilderness areas. We use military surveillance techniques to monitor areas where families are most likely to encounter dangerous wildlife, Scout explained to Park Service officials. Early warning systems can prevent encounters like Sarah's by alerting people to avoid areas where predators are actively hunting. The monitoring network had documented dozens of predator sightings and weather emergencies, allowing park services to issue warnings and temporarily close dangerous areas before civilian encounters occurred. Master Sergeant Carlos "Thunder" Martinez, a former Air Force para-rescue specialist, established rapid response teams that could provide immediate assistance to hikers, climbers, and families who encountered emergencies in remote locations. Traditional search and rescue operates on response times measured in hours, Thunder explained to emergency services conferences. Our teams position themselves proactively in high-risk areas so we can respond to emergencies in minutes rather than hours. The rapid response capability had already prevented several fatalities, including a family trapped by flash flooding and 2 separate incidents involving hikers who had suffered serious injuries in remote locations. "Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Steele asked potential veteran recruits, challenging them to understand how their military training could serve civilian protection missions. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? The annual Sarah Mitchell Day celebration had become the largest wilderness safety event in the Rocky Mountain region, bringing together thousands of families whose lives had been touched by Sarah's story or the Foundation's wilderness safety programs. The event commemorated not just her rescue from the mountain lion, but Steele's transformation from isolated veteran to community protector. 6 months ago, a mountain lion almost killed me, and a Marine I didn't know risked his life to save mine. Sarah addressed the enormous crowd during the anniversary celebration, speaking with remarkable confidence for someone so young. Today, Steele and our Foundation family teach thousands of families how to stay safe in the wilderness while being prepared to help each other when scary things happen. The celebration included wilderness safety demonstrations, emergency response training, wildlife education presentations, and testimonials from families who had used safety skills to prevent or survive dangerous encounters. 9-year-old Marcus Chen shared his experience using Sarah's safety training during a family camping trip. "When we saw a black bear near our campsite, I remembered what Sarah taught us about staying calm and making ourselves appear larger. My parents and I backed away slowly while making noise, and the bear left without any problems." Marcus's successful bear encounter using techniques taught in Sarah's programs embodied everything the young girl and Steele were working to achieve through their wilderness education initiatives. 10-year-old Sofia Rodriguez told her story about helping during a family hiking emergency. "When my grandmother fell and hurt her ankle on a mountain trail, I used the emergency signaling skills Sarah taught me while my parents provided first aid. The Mountain Guardian Rapid Response Team found us in 20 minutes, instead of the hours it would have taken for regular search and rescue." Undine, the community that had formed around Sarah's rescue and Steele's transformation, represented something unprecedented in veteran services and wilderness safety, a sustainable collaboration between combat veterans, civilian families, emergency response professionals, and educational institutions that had created measurable improvements in outdoor safety throughout the region. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. 2 years after Steele's encounter with the mountain lion, the Sarah Mitchell Wilderness Protection Foundation had been recognized by the Colorado State Legislature as the most effective wilderness safety organization in the region, with programs that had prevented an estimated 47 serious injuries and at least 12 potential fatalities. The legislative recognition led to state funding for expanding the Mountain Guardian network to all of Colorado's wilderness areas, creating the first veteran-led wilderness protection service in the United States. Steele's individual act of courage had grown into a statewide program that employed over 50 veterans and served thousands of families annually. Sarah, now 10 years old and recognized as the youngest wilderness safety educator in America, had been invited to address the National Wilderness Safety Conference in Washington, D.C. Her transformation from victim to advocate represented the kind of growth that effective mentorship and purposeful activity could inspire. 2 years ago, I learned that scary things can happen in the wilderness, but I also learned that good people will risk everything to protect children, Sarah told the national audience with remarkable composure. Steele taught me that being scared is okay, but being prepared and helping other people is better. Steele's transformation from isolated, struggling veteran to nationally recognized wilderness safety expert had attracted attention from veteran services organizations, wilderness management agencies, and trauma treatment professionals throughout the country who wanted to understand how his model could be replicated. Steele Morrison's story demonstrates that combat veterans can find healing and purpose through civilian service missions that apply their military training to community protection, commented Dr. Robert Williams during congressional hearings on veteran services. His foundation shows how individual acts of courage can grow into programs that serve entire communities. The national attention had led to requests for technical assistance from wilderness areas in 12 states as park services and veteran organizations wanted to develop similar programs that combined military expertise with civilian protection. Tell me, have you ever saved someone? Sarah asked audiences during her speaking engagements, challenging them to understand their potential for helping others in dangerous situations. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? 5 years after Steele's life-changing encounter with the mountain lion, the Sarah Mitchell Wilderness Protection Foundation had grown into a national organization with chapters in 18 states, providing wilderness safety education and emergency response capabilities throughout America's most challenging outdoor environments. Steele continued to serve as the Foundation's national director, while maintaining his special relationship with Sarah, who had become not just his inspiration, but his partner in expanding wilderness safety education to serve hundreds of thousands of families annually. Sarah, now 12 years old and a nationally recognized advocate for wilderness safety and veteran services, was pursuing advanced wilderness skills while maintaining her role as the Foundation's youth spokesperson and education coordinator. The lesson I learned that day wasn't just that good people exist when you need help, Sarah told audiences at the International Wilderness Safety Conference, speaking with wisdom that exceeded her years. The lesson was that everyone has the responsibility to be prepared to help others, and that the scariest experiences can teach us how to protect people we care about. The Foundation's statistical impact was impressive. Over 100,000 families trained in wilderness safety, 75,000 children educated in survival skills, 50,000 adults certified in wilderness first aid, and documented prevention of over 300 serious injuries and fatalities. But the human impact was even more significant. Steele's model had provided purpose and healing for over 200 combat veterans while creating safer outdoor experiences for countless families who could now enjoy wilderness adventures with appropriate preparation and protective networks. 10 years after a former Marine had heard a child scream in the Colorado wilderness, Steele Morrison and Sarah Mitchell continued to serve together as partners in a mission that had grown far beyond their individual survival story. Their foundation had trained wilderness safety teams in 38 states and had influenced national policies for veteran services and outdoor recreation safety. Tell me, have you ever saved someone? Steele's story asked everyone who heard it, challenging them to understand that heroism wasn't just for people with special training, but for anyone willing to act decisively when someone needed help. The mountain lion that had stalked Sarah had been successfully tracked and relocated to remote habitat, where human contact was minimal. living out its life in appropriate wilderness environment, while Steele and Sarah's experience led to improved predator management policies throughout the national park system. The solitary biker, who had stopped everything to fight a mountain lion with his bare hands, had created a legacy that continued to protect families throughout America's wilderness areas. Steele's story demonstrated that courage could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities, and that the most terrifying experiences could become the foundation for helping countless other people find safety, purpose, and healing. Steele and Sarah's partnership proved that heroes could emerge from the most unexpected encounters, that military training could serve noble civilian purposes, and that when good people commit to protecting others, individual acts of courage can grow into movements that change the world.